I had so many hesitations about starting my Instagram platform because I was like, that's just diving deeper into singleness. It's again, one of those things where it's like, I finally had to go, you know what? Okay, fine. God, if you want me to go help other singles instead of pursue marriage, then that's what I'll do.
I know you've publicly shared a little bit about the wild kind of out of the blue situation of you meeting your current relationship. I'm curious if you would just like, as an example, give people the opportunity to hear what does like an out of a blue, like, hey, I was thriving and then this happened situation. Would you be open to sharing that?
Absolutely. So like,
welcome to the Grace for the Growth podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Leo. The goal of this podcast is to encourage you on your own growth journey by empowering you to live your life with authenticity, freedom, and confidence. We will get real and raw as we dive into honest conversations about life, faith, business, relationships, dating, healing, and so much more. My goal is that you would walk away from our time together feeling a little less alone, a little less crazy, and a little more brave to be yourself. I hope you will find yourself more compassionate to past you, challenged as present you, and excited for future you. Embrace the story, welcome the messy of it all, sit in the unknown, and most importantly, live authentically. So pull up a chair in my virtual living room and let's dive into today's conversation. Hello, friends. It's another episode of Grace for the Growth. I'm Courtney Leo, and I am joined here by Brianna Rossi, and I cannot wait for this conversation. We've done a couple of Instagram lives. We've definitely met on Zoom, and I just really connect with just your story and just the action that you take. You know, I'm all really big on taking aligned action, and especially in your singleness. And so I'm excited that we have crossed paths, and I'm just excited for listeners here to hear your voice, Brianna. So thanks for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I seriously, every time we get together, I just love the conversations that we have. So this is so exciting.
Yes, me as well. I really love it. I'm really excited for today. So before we dive into what we're going to talk about today, would you just take a few moments to introduce yourself if somebody has not connected with you, or maybe they're like, maybe they do know you, but maybe they know your platform, but not you. Like, would you just introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brianna. I'm 31 years old. I had a very, very long journey of singleness. But in that time, I have a full-time career. So I work as like a radiation therapist. So I'm in like the cancer field, cancer treatments. Did some ballet. So I grew up as a ballerina and I teach in that. So my biggest passion as of now, is really helping other people who went through that long singleness journey that I did. I'm at a point right now where I'm actually in a relationship, which is honestly a really fun place to speak from because I'm still so familiar with that singleness journey because I was just immersed in it for so long. But also having this cool vantage point of being like, oh, okay, wait, I can kind of see like how things played out and I can see how the relationship part of it unfolded. So it's really fun to help just kind of talk to people like from this point. So my biggest thing is now I have an Instagram page where I coach singles and I started that in my singleness. And it's just sort of evolved. And latest and greatest news is a brand new book. So I'm a first time published author. That has been so exciting. And the topic I chose was singleness and dating. So it's just been really, really fun to take it like the book route and really get into the nitty gritty details with people.
Wow, that's amazing. And for those who don't know, your platform is called Single and Standing. So some people might recognize that name or maybe not, or those kind of things. But at Single and Standing is Brianna here. So, well, great. Well, I'm excited. I love hearing your story. I also love the fact that you decided to, well, first of all, before we even get into that, being a published author is a huge feat. So congrats on that. I know that happened just at the end of 2023. So congrats on that. That's huge, but you're welcome. But this concept, what I love is that you were like, hey, no, like I'm going to start doing something about serving people and letting people feel known and seen for exactly where they're at and really thriving in this life, even while I'm still walking through it. And so from your Instagram process, from starting your book process and those kind of things, you really just said, hey, I'm actually going to say yes to big dreams now. And I'm going to actually step into what God has for me presently now. And so I just honor you and I commend you for that. And I think that's something that I know for me as a coach, I definitely coach singles and encourage singles to do that quite often. And so it's really cool to see you living that out and to see your life fully thriving and all of that. So today I want to ask you a question as we get into our conversation. So, here at Grace for the Growth, we're all talking about journeys and we're talking about the growing process and the highs and lows and those kind of things. And so I'm curious, and we talk a lot about singleness here. So I feel like singleness in general, we tackle different aspects of it on here just because that's the season of life that I'm in. That's the season of life a lot of our listeners, not all of our listeners, but a lot of our listeners are in. But I'm curious for you, Brianna, and you talk so much about different aspects of it. But what feels like the biggest, what feels like the loudest thing currently right now that about your season of singleness, that you were like, yeah, this was something that was really impactful for my journey. This is something that I really, it just really got me or just couldn't get through, or is the hump that I kept facing. This is a mountain that I kept facing. The reason I ask that is because, again, I think especially of us in the single space, we can all talk about singleness all day, every day. But I have found that there are specific things that each person feels really, really strongly about. So what is the thing that was the loudest for you that you kind of worked through in your singleness season?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, a huge, huge obstacle that I faced was this feeling that my life was on hold, because I had, and I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to this, I had a very, very strong vision of how my life would go. I, grew up that, Christian girl who just knew that one day I wanted to get married and I wanted to have babies. And there was never a question mark surrounding that. There was no
Sure.
If I got married one day, it'd be lovely. It was no, when I get married, these are all the things I'm going to do. I'm going to get a career that will last me until I have babies. And it was just very well laid out.
Yeah.
And as we know, sometimes our well laid out plans are not how they go. And so that really hit me hard because I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I had envisioned, okay, so I'm getting there. I'm like, oh, I'm 27, I'm 28, I'm 29, I'm getting closer to my 30s. And I'm going, oh my gosh, not only do I am I not married already, which I totally thought would happen, but I didn't even have anyone on the horizon. It wasn't I was oh, I have a boyfriend or I'm talking to somebody, nothing. I would go on these online dates. And honestly, I feel like I'm a huge fan of dating apps because I feel like they're a great, great way to reach just a bunch more people. So the tool itself is great. But that means that some people, sometimes you will meet someone who's a really, really great person you're getting to know. And then a really big percentage of the time you're weeding through all the other ones that don't feel like that perfect match. And that can get so discouraging. So I got to this point. I had recently I had a short relationship, had been through a breakup. And my plan was okay, you know what? I'm just going to just go find someone else. So that one didn't work. That one wasn't right. So now I just got to find the next person. And I was struggling to do that because the people that I was dating, it wasn't right for the various reasons that it wasn't right. Either I wasn't feeling it or the faith component wasn't there. There's so many reasons. I mean, we're talking about meeting, we're talking about marriage. We're talking about finding the one person you're going to decide to spend the rest of your life with, because you're so aligned. We're looking for some big shoes to fill here.
Sure.
So there's so many people that don't fill those shoes.
Sure.
So I would just get so frustrated in that process and so discouraged with dating. And really, I started to just freak out because I was like, wait a second, I'm not meeting someone on the timeline that I wanted to, and I don't know that I will. I started thinking questions okay, does that mean that I didn't want to be one of those people that I look and I go, oh my goodness, that lady said she was single at 45. I don't want to be single at 45 or, all these things you think. And I just oh my gosh, and I just felt so much anxiety because I was I can't control that at all. I have no idea if I'll be single for another year or another 5 years, another 10 years. And it freaked me out. Yeah. So I really went through this journey of going from this place of honestly I remember just sitting in my living room, literally just like sobbing because I was like, wow, like this is not the life that I pictured for myself. Like this isn't what I thought was going to happen. And I don't know what it's going to look like. So some of the things that, I mean, obviously, so for me, I got to this point where let's say like, okay, quick little jump ahead, got to this point where I ended up, even before I met my current boyfriend, I ended up being like, wow, like my singleness is really awesome. And that had nothing to do with like, you know, like, okay, because everything has fallen in line perfectly. It was just simply like, I got to this place where I was like, okay, I'm really enjoying where I am right now. Never did I ever stop desiring marriage. So like, just throwing that out there. Cause I think that sometimes people say this, like you want to thrive in your singleness, kind of compare it to that, like, oh, be content as a single or find contentment in your singleness. And that's a phrase we hear so much. And we honestly, are kind of sick of it. Like I got kind of sick of it. Like, yes, I know I need to be content, but I still want marriage. So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's important to point out that still wanting marriage is a very, very real thing. Like you can love your singleness. That doesn't mean you have to totally decide, so I don't care about marriage at all.
Sure.
No. But it does mean that there's somewhere in between singleness being this awful death sentence and life of suffering and, okay, good, I have a relationship. Like there's got to be a happy balance in there somewhere where you're like, you know what? I can cling on to both. I can have a strong desire for a relationship and really dream about that, pray for that, work towards that, and at the same time, have a really great, fulfilling life right now. And I think that that's a hard place to find sometimes because we can focus so much on what those desires are that it's like they overcome us. I just remember being in the shower and thinking about how much I wanted to be in a relationship and being in the car and thinking about how much I didn't want to be single. Like it was consuming. I would think about it all the time. And I wouldn't say that I even got to the point where I was like, oh, I don't think about it anymore. No, I always thought about it, but I also found the ability to thrive where I was as well. So dreams for the future, but a present thriving too. And I think sometimes we have a fear of thriving in our present because I think we're almost afraid, wait, if I build too much here, well, then what about that future plan that I wanted? But actually building a thriving life right now is not a stumbling block. The future God has for you. In fact, I would say it's probably like a launch pad to the blessings God has for you. And I say that only because I honestly experienced that personally, where I felt for a very long time like I was living life on hold. I did not want to take steps in really any direction besides dating because dating was what I had decided that, marriage was what was coming next in my mind. Like I had decided like, this is it. I want to end up in a marriage, so I can't have any distractions. But what I think I really learned was that I needed to embrace where I was, but also I needed to kind of follow that guidance of where God was taking me, different things that maybe, I was so clear that my next chapter was supposed to be marriage. God wasn't as clear with my next chapter being marriage. Yeah. But I almost kind of felt like stepping into what he wanted for me would be a distraction, but it actually wasn't. It actually helped me to fully grow into who I was. And I think is even how I ended up in this place that I am now with a book and a boyfriend and being able to look back on my singleness going, wow, that was a really awesome chapter of life. So yeah, I just feel like that idea of really like living in this present moment and actually embracing what God's calling you to do is really, really like one of the many things that helped me in my journey.
Yeah. Thanks for giving us that background on it. And I think, I am all about thriving in the present. I'm all about, hey, and I know we have talked about this in other platforms, like just because you choose to say yes to dreams today doesn't mean you're saying no or not yet to marriage dreams. And I don't think we've truly given ourselves full permission to do that. And so I love that you got to that point. And an added bonus, a cherry on top, that you are getting to reap being able to hold your writings, to be able to hold your story in a book form. A relationship is always wonderful, but you know, a lot of people don't always experience that. A lot of people find that contentment, that present in their single life, and that doesn't come. So I'm curious if we can take it one step back before that. And when you're talking about, hey, like I was living life on hold, but then I decided to like live in the present, like, and actually start taking steps. Like you had said that, you know, for so long, marriage was the next step. And so I'm curious if you can take us back to before the book, before the relationship, when Brianna is sitting here and going, oh my gosh, I just can't think about anything else. What does thriving in the present, how did that look like to you? What steps did you take? What did thriving in the present look like, in hopes that maybe our readers may get a path into what that could look like for them? Not our readers, listeners.
No,
we're talking about a book.
Listeners, and they will be readers, right? No, absolutely. Because so what you just mentioned, like obviously I can tell you right now, oh, I'm in a relationship, happy ending to the story. I didn't know if that would be my ending or not. So when I was sitting there in my singleness, I really had to sit there and think like, okay, yes, I desire marriage, but there's that very real possibility that I may or may not experience it, which honestly, people would remind me of that. And I hated it every time.
Yeah, I know.
That just does not sit well with me. Like, I want it so bad. But it caused me to ask myself some like really real questions. And so I had to kind of sit there and think like, okay, let's say I didn't ever get married. Like, let's pretend that just didn't ever happen. Mm-hmm. Does that mean my whole life then had to be like a wash up? Like, it was just like, oh man, like, you know, Brianna was alive and planned this beautiful life for herself, but that didn't happen. So unfortunately, the sad tale is she lived a sad single life for, you know, a bajillion years. Like that can't be it. That can't be the end of the story. Yeah. And as much as we want to make it be a certain way, like, no, that can't be the end of the story. So it has to be a relationship. It's like, okay, it probably will be. It might be. And honestly, like, we honestly don't know. Like, I think all of us feel from time to time we're going to be single forever. And that very, very often is not the case. So if you're sitting there and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be single forever. Like, yes, you feel that way. And every other single feels that way until they meet someone. Like, it's not a guarantee that you're going to stay there. So like, there's very much so is hope that the relationship will come. But the hope that I think it's really important to implant is that whether it does or doesn't does not impact how amazing your life can be, how fun it can be, how purpose-filled it can be, how much you can accomplish. Because you got to think about it. When I started writing this book on my journey in singleness, I was single. So I was already learning how to implement change as a completely single person, but to the extent that I was writing a book. So I was very much so using my singleness to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take my singleness. I'm going to make an impact with it. So for me, I started an Instagram page. I wrote a book. That doesn't mean everybody has to do those things.
Right.
But honestly, the underlying theme there, what it was, if we want to get down to what I was truly doing there, was I was truly just kind of tuning into what I felt like God wanted me to do. And I know that that's like a very like obscure piece of advice sometimes, because it's like, okay, yes, we want God's plans for us. We want to do what God tells us to do. What the heck does that even mean? But I think if we want to really, really simplify it, like if we're talking like, what should you do right now? You want a purpose-filled life. What should you do? I honestly feel like each one of us has these little like natural little gifts inside of us, natural little talents, maybe something that's just a little nudge. Like that doesn't mean people have to go write a book. It doesn't mean that they have to start an Instagram page if they're like, oh, I don't like being in front of a camera. And instead of saying, okay, for you, the person that you are, what are the things that you're good at? Like, what are the little things that you're like, you know what? Like people do always tell me that, you know, I'm really good at this, or I've always kind of had a desire to do this, but I feel like, you know, I might look stupid. Because when we really get down to like what it was that I did with my Instagram page and book, it's not about the book itself. It's about that initial choice to say, hey, there's something here that I feel like is sort of like a a little stirring, a little thought that I have, something like, I could do that.
Yeah.
But I was also very, very terrified to do it. I didn't want to start an Instagram page because people might see me. Like,
Yeah.
followers, like, oh no, that's embarrassing. Like, there were so many things that could keep me from actually listening to that tiny little nudge to do it.
Sure.
So I think what I would encourage people to do is to kind of tune into yourself and say, where are those little nudges? Like, what are those little things? It can be a talent of yours. Like, well, you know what? I feel like I'm really, gifted at encouraging others. Or for me to even start where I was like, you know what? I think I've always thought it would be kind of nice to have like a little group chat with some friends, like sending them some singleness encouragement. Like, honestly, that's where the first little nudge was. And so I think that it's kind of tuning into those little things where it's like, all right, what's something that maybe God has gifted me to do?
Sure.
That doesn't mean it has to be like, I'm going on missions to save the world. It can be that. But I think sometimes we're looking for something way too big. Yeah. And sometimes it's a matter of just simply going, okay, like, what am I feeling? What are some interests I have?
Yeah.
Just stepping into some of your interests. Okay, but that's just something for fun. Like, just stepping into them. I did everything from, I liked salsa dancing. So I went and salsa danced, even though I didn't have a partner. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go because I like to salsa dance. And I could sit there and be like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if one day me and my husband did that? And we could do all these big, extraordinary things. It's like, okay, I don't have the husband right now, but I have the ability to salsa dance. So I guess I'll show up and I'll go by myself. Like, I would love it if me and my husband could go on cool vacations, but you know what? I don't have that. But I do have a savings account. I'm going on a solo trip. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I just feel like there's so many different things that it's like, just little things that are like, you maybe kind of been saving them for later. Or like maybe one day it's like, no, you're not promised those days in the future. You're not promised. We're not even promised tomorrow. So we have today. Like, what do you want to do today to make today as impactful as you can? That means today you're single today. Like, okay, so today is a single day. It's like, all right, so this is today. Don't know what tomorrow will be. I could be, in a great date tomorrow. But today, I'm single. So how am I going to not waste today? How am I going to enjoy today? And how am I going to use today? Like, it's a gift. How do I use it? Yeah. So it was really asking myself those questions that got me thinking and got me ultimately moving.
So good. That's so good. I think that little nudge of it doesn't have to be this massive thing of like, oh my gosh, like as a single, you have so much time to kill it for the kingdom and like blah, blah, blah. No, like what is that nudge? I think we actually have to get like really honest for a second and remember that. I love what you said, how like, if I am single for forever, is my legacy going to be like, wow, Brianna planned a whole life for herself that never happened. So there's nothing to show for her life. I think that is a huge reality check. And what a good moment. What a good moment and what a turning moment. I had one very similar a couple years ago where I was processing through this and what does life look like thriving in the present? What does it look like for me to be me, not a filtered version of me, not an adapted version of me, but me? And it comes down to, for me, was this, I believe that God created us for reason and purpose. And I don't believe the purpose switch turns on and activates once there's an I do. And yet so many of us, women particularly, live as if when this, when that, when this. And I talk a lot about the idolization of marriage. And there's usually two sides of that. There's usually either, oh my gosh, my singleness is terrible because I have marriage on this pedestal. I have this as this ultimate goal, this ultimate prize. And because I don't have it, my life is in the dumps. I'm not going to do anything, right? Like that is one way. The other way is all I can think about is dating. I'm going to date. I'm going to go, like nothing else is going to happen in my life other than dating. My whole mind is going to be about dating. My whole life is going to be about dating. That's also that's the other extreme, right? So different forms of action, but it's this idolization of marriage of like, marriage is this prize. And I'm like, look, marriage is a good thing. Like, thank God. And I believe in kingdom impact. I believe in kingdom marriages. I am hoping and believing and praying for one myself, praying for everyone listening. Like, I believe that it is absolutely incredible. However, when I think about us as human beings and as daughters and sons of the King, like, our purpose doesn't start with the I do, and yet so many of us live that way. And what I have found, where I'm coming from the place not just in my own story, but also in coaching so many singles. What I teach is my program is called Authentic Life Activator. And so it's about activating this life that you have been designed for, because we all have this life. We all have these talents. We all have these interests. We all have these little things like what you said. And so what does it look like to step into abundance, to align ourselves, to accept the season that we're in, to step into that alignment and to step into abundance? What does it look like for us to activate that authentic life? And really, I believe there's freedom there. And so what I find so often with singles particularly is that if I say yes and if I start stepping into it, I am no longer going to be more available or more ready or more whatever. Like, what if God takes me in this whole different direction? Like, I don't know if you felt this way, but your platform is in the singleness space. My platform is in singleness space. I don't know if you thought this, but I've definitely thought this, like, if I step into and I feel like I'm supposed to be talking to singles and creating content for singles, what kind of guy, like, is that going to be so intimidating that, like, hey, by the way, do you want to date me? My whole life is about talking about singleness. Like, that whole thing. Like, I don't know if you ever felt that way, but it was a thing for me. It was a thing of like that, like, what kind of guy is going to be like, okay, great. Or the flip side of like, hey, if I build this platform, and I mean platform in like an opportunity to connect and relate with people. I don't mean in like a, super egotistical way, but like, that's just, but yeah, if I were to build this talking about singleness, not just talking about being a Christian, not just talking about being a, faith-filled believer, not just talking about purpose, but specifically talking about singleness, what is a guy going to think about that? And what happens if for some happen chance I do get married?
Yeah.
What are the people who are listening to me going to feel? And it was this freedom I needed to step into of saying, but what has God asked me to do right now? What is the thing I'm super passionate about right now? What do I feel super aligned in? And for me, I feel super aligned in reworking these mindsets, tearing down the idolization of marriage that we have in the church culture, and saying, hey, marriage is this good thing to be desired, and we can embrace that, and we can talk about that. We can talk about healthy dating and healthy relationships and healthy communication and pray for healthy marriages. And
Yes.
we can also look at what does it look like to activate these wonderful, God-filled, purpose-filled lives. And so that is like, I love what you said about just lean into the interest, like just start something, because I think that is so practical.
Yeah, you know what? So this analogy comes to my mind because this is something that I had written in the book, but like I'll do my best to rephrase and share it here. But I just kind of think it makes sense because, so like, I don't know if you grew up around the same time as me, so you probably are familiar with this. But there's like those old fashioned phones that used to be attached to the wall where there's like the like cord when you get a phone call.
Sure.
So I remember my mom used to have one of those in the kitchen. And so it would be like, if you were on the phone and like somebody's like, okay, like, oh, hold a second. We've got, like, oh, we'll place you on hold. We'll be right back when you're ready to talk to a representative. You'd have to literally just stand there and wait. And like, you could maybe like face, like you could walk over to the stove and like scramble your eggs, but you could only go like a 2-foot radius. You just had to stand and wait right there. And on hold.
You couldn't even put it on speakerphone.
You couldn't put it on
speakerphone.
No, it's like, okay, like everything is impaired. I'm working on this. And you just kind of in this whole pattern. Then now technology has come along. So now what happens is if I call someone, usually what it says, like if you're waiting for a representative, it'll be like, would you like a call back? Which I think is so convenient because yes, I don't even want to wait with speakerphone and listening to your like piano music. Like, yes, like call me back whenever you're ready to talk to me. I'll be off somewhere. And then I just go and I live my life. I do my thing. If they call me back that night, great. If they call me back the next day, whatever, I'm doing my thing. So I think that that's an analogy for us living our singleness because I think too many of us are living like we're still attached to that phone with the cord. So it's like, we're waiting. Wow. We're waiting on marriage. And so we're kind of like, we're sort of standing in one place. Like, yeah, we might go, okay, yeah, I'm over here. Yeah, I'll get a new job. We kind of do all these little things, but we don't really make any moves or do anything. So it's like, yeah, but like, I have to be present. I have to be ready for this because when the call is ready, when the husband is coming, like, I'm here, I'm ready, let's go. But with God, we have the ability to operate in more of the technology like the cell phone, where honestly, wherever you are, When it's time and that call is ready, it's okay, this is the moment for you to meet your person. That can literally happen wherever you're. That will happen if you decided, okay, I went on vacation. That will happen if you decided, I'm going to start a singles ministry. But you go live your life, do your thing, and you don't have to stand in this little like, oh, I'm waiting. You can fully thrive. That doesn't mean you don't keep dating. Sure, keep dating, but you date and you build your life and you live and you thrive and you enjoy and you produce. When it's right, God will find you where you are. He's like, oh shoot, she's in a singles group. Like, oh well, like that's just it's not gonna make any sense now. Like it'll work. You'll get the call back. You'll get the phone will ring at the right time. You don't have to wait on hold. So like, I feel like to me that just real like that difference is like, yes, that's how we should be living our life. Like no reservations, no strings, just go for it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so good. What an analogy for anyone watching this recording. My light just went out, so I'm turning it on. But we embrace the messy here. If you're listening, you have no idea what just happened. But anyways, that analogy, the on hold analogy, boom, like that is so good. What a God-filled analogy of that, of so many of us are living like we're just stuck at the phone, and there are so many other things you could be doing. One thing it comes up a lot when I'm coaching singles and they're like, I'm really burnt out on dating apps. I need a break, but I'm so afraid. And I'm like, look, what do we believe about the character of God? Like, do we believe the character of God like is so big? And it comes down to, hey, friend, I truly believe that God cares about your marriage. I truly believe that if marriage is about kingdom impact, if it is about partnership, I truly believe that you being in a marriage that is healthy and thriving and with a good person is of God's interest. So that's the first thing. I think so many of us take it on ourselves of the whole dating process, and it's like, okay, what would it look like to actually be like, not like, God, I just like bring him to me, but also be like, God, like I recognize the fact that this is important to you as well, that my dating life, my future marriage is important to you as well. And that's the first thing. So if we believe that our dating and our marriage is important to God because of the kingdom impact, because of the generational change, because of all of those things, then we have to think that God is a bigger God, that if you take a 3-month dating app break because you're burnt out, that it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, God's just looking down on you and being like, here's the thing, Brianna. I brought your husband right across your dating app. However, you were on a break and therefore you missed him. And therefore you are going to have to suffer way longer in singleness because it was I just dangled him right in front of you and you said no. We do that also too with like rejection. We do that all the time. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Your dating life is a part of a bigger story that God is revealing. Like the story is written for you. God is revealing the story. And guess what? Your story might not look like the cookie cutter, like Christian, like girl meets her high school sweetheart or ring by spring in college meets him type thing. That might not be your story. And so the fact that your story and your timeline is different does not make it wrong, does not make you bad, does not make you behind. It just means your story is different. So what would it look like for us to embrace our story? What would it look like for us to go, okay, my story, my timeline looks different, and I'm okay with that. There is a freedom in there, but that the only way that we can get to thriving in our singleness is if we recognize that I can still also hold this desire for marriage, and I can recognize that God cares about this too, and it's important to him too. And if I feel like this prompting of, I feel like I need to not spend so much time on dating, I actually feel right now in this season, God's actually asking me to spend my evenings like with this Bible study, or I'm supposed to be doing this with this girl. Like, I just feel like I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, I don't know. I just find it always works better when we obey God.
Yes.
And like stories always happen. And so I know we're running out of time here, but Brianna, I'm curious and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. But as we're sitting here, as we're talking about like God God being in the details, God caring about our marriage, and crazy things happen. I know you've publicly shared a little bit about the wild kind of out of the blue situation of you meeting your current relationship. You don't have to go into all the details, but I'm curious if you would just like, as an example, give people the opportunity to hear what does like an out of a blue, like, hey, I was thriving and then this happened situation. Would you be open to sharing that?
Absolutely. So like the little like summarized version, which I share all of it in my book, but like I'll try to like condense it. But like, so I had, like, we already know, I had started the singles ministry on Instagram. I had started the book. And honestly, for me, if I want to zone in on what that was, it was just like kind of me feeling like this is what I think God wants me to be doing with this time.
Sure.
So long story short, the man I'm in a relationship with right now had actually connected with me through my Instagram platform. So it's kind of cool to me because I had so many hesitations about starting my Instagram platform because I was like, that's just diving deeper into singleness. It's, again, one of those things where it's like, I finally had to go, you know what? Okay, fine. God, if you want me to go help other singles instead of pursue marriage, then that's what I'll do. So I'm like starting this thing that I feel like is what God wanted me to do. And I was doing it for an entire year when all of a sudden I got a DM from this guy. And I had gotten DMs from people before. And honestly, I had kind of just like disregarded some of them because
sure,
these different things, like, okay, whatever.
Sure.
So I hadn't even acknowledged for like 3 days. And then I finally opened it and it was a video. And I was like, interesting. So again, long story short, he had sent me a video introducing himself, asking me on a date. And I was just blown away by this guy that had just slid into my DMs. So now 1 year later, we're in a relationship, I guess a little over a year. We've been in a relationship. And what really hits me over and over again is I was so afraid. Like, it was kind of like what you're talking about, those people where you're like, okay, what if I get off of dating apps for a little while? Or what if I do something like that? I was so afraid to spend less time in the dating apps and more time in the things that I felt like I should be doing to build in this season. But the building in this season, the building what God wanted me to build, the following my passions, the learning to thrive, the letting go, putting the phone down and being like, okay, you know what? I'll get a call back when it's time, and just living my life. Oh my gosh, that's actually where I ended up meeting him. Like, no way. And
wow.
That's the moral I want people to take away from that isn't like dating or no dating. Like, okay, the secret is you just get off the apps. Okay, right. The secret is what you got to do is you've got to start an Instagram. But like, it's not one of those things in a secret. It's like when it's
not formulaic. There's not a formula.
Not formulaic. If I had to give any sort of guidance, I would say, okay, so you sit there and you say you talk to some people, and for them, they're saying, you know what? I kind of want to spend a little bit more time in this group or this afternoon Bible study, but I'm worried about taking a dating app break. Follow that, again, that nudge. You'll be okay. Where you think God's leading you go. If you're somebody who's like, I've kind of considered dating apps, but they've always scared me, but it might be a good idea. Follow that nudge. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Lean in to where you think God might be leading you. And if you don't know for sure, take a step. You're not going to have, the thing about God is he doesn't give us the blueprint, right? He didn't tell me, like, Brianna, you know what you should do? You should start an Instagram page, and 1 year later, I'll have a guy slide into your DMs. That's how you'll meet him. There you go. He didn't say that. So really, it was a matter of me going on the apps, taking a little break from the dating apps, kind of starting this Instagram page with 15 followers because I kind of felt like I might be good at it. Doing a little more dating apps behind the scenes for over a year. And eventually on that path of just kind of following what I felt like, right now is a good time for me to be dating. Right now is a good time for a break. Right now is a good time to pour into this. Kind of just following the flow instead of thinking I had to do a certain thing to control a certain outcome, and sort of just letting the flow happen. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's actually how I met him. So like, don't be afraid of the flow. Don't be afraid to kind of let go a little bit and do what you think you're supposed to do. I don't even want to just say like, oh, that might be how you meet your spouse. It could be.
Sure.
Like, it honestly could be. Honestly though, even if it wasn't that, the blessings God has for you are going to be on that path. Like when you're following his leading, anything that he has for you that's good, that's a gift, that's a blessing, maybe a spouse, maybe things you never even thought of, they're going to be right there. So follow that, you know?
So good. That's so good, Brianna. I love it. Following that flow, following that nudge of the Holy Spirit, following that. And it's okay. Like there might be fears that come up. There might be mindset shifts that come up. There are so many resources available to you. I know I have my coaching community that we are navigating that ebbs and flows of that. You have incredible content on your Instagram page. Your book is an incredible resource of how to thrive in singleness through your story and those kind of things. And so I just, I think that was just an incredible word and a great way to end our conversation today. But before you go, Brianna, how can people connect with you, get your resources, all that kind of stuff, if they want to do that further after this conversation?
Yeah, biggest way is Instagram. Single and Standing is the Instagram handle. And that's also the title of my book, Single and Standing. So you can find that on Amazon, lots of other places. And then if you go to my Instagram, I've got links to it constantly. So you'll find it there.
Amazing. And we'll put that link here in the show notes as well and all that kind of stuff. Brianna, thank you so much for your openness and your honesty with this. You are so passionate about this, and what a gift that is to the world. What a gift it is to singles. What a gift it is just honestly, just to humanity. I'm so grateful for your obedient yes, and for you saying yes to the things of God. And I honor it. I honor it so well. I know that the place that you're at standing today took a lot of tears, took a lot of work. And so I'm really grateful that myself and the other listeners get to hear from you today and get to be so encouraged. There's so many nuggets from this. And so if you're listening, if you have a takeaway, something that stood out to you, go ahead and send me a DM, send Brianna a DM. Let us know. We would love to chat with you, love to hear from you. Both of us love our Instagram worlds. We're constantly sending things back and forth to each other. So go ahead, feel free to reach out to DM us. And I just challenge you to take those big, bold steps, or maybe they're not big, bold steps. Maybe it's just one step towards a nudge. And we've got you every single step of the way. So thanks again, Brianna. I hope you listeners feel a little less alone and a little more seen in this conversation. And we will chat with you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grace for the Growth podcast with Courtney Leo. I hope that this conversation encouraged you and inspired you on your own growth journey and as you pursue a life full of authenticity and freedom. I want to encourage you to interact with us on social media at Grace for the Growth and at Courtney Y. Leo. Also, if you've got any ideas, way that these episodes have impacted you or encouraged you, I want to invite you to either DM us or email us at hello@graceforthegrowth.com. Until next time, I challenge you to embrace your story, welcome the messy, sit in the unknown, and live authentically. Bye-bye now.